Hello, am I visible and audible? Okay, I'm gonna set my timer. If you wanna POI me, please just unmute yourself because I won't be looking at the chat. Okay, I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna tell you and I'm gonna convince you on why you would want to live in this world and why preferring this world is a justifiable action and why is it a justifiable opinion. Right, a little bit of characterization, characterization. Let's define the objectively attractive parameter that is going to apply in this world. All right, so the objectively attractive parameter that are going to apply it is physically attractiveness. This is what we are going to talk about in this debate. Overall, it is attractiveness in physique, like their physique is attractive in terms of their face, their body, and whatsoever, right? Before that, secondly, I have to clarify that this motion is a THP motion, meaning there's a veil of ignorance that are applied here. That's why opposition could not really argue in a sense where, oh, there is so much thing that have been lost in comparison to status quo, because this is a whole new completely this is a completely new world that things that are in status quo does not apply. That's why we are solely going to talk about the counterfactual, right? Thirdly, objective attractiveness as a world. I'm gonna characterize what this world look like. This world is not that people would suddenly inherit, or like everybody in society would suddenly inherit the genetics where they all have chiseled jaws, tall nose, and blue eyes, right? This world exists where society standard that change, not your body that change. Where people, although have different feature like we have now, or like have ethnic feature whatsoever, although all those feature in a combination is would still be deemed beautiful and attractive, regardless of what that feature is, right? People in this world just view everyone as attractive physically. So but this would also means that I have to clarify that in this world, human won't be like the perfect being, like godlike. They would still have different personality and different looks. It's just that the societal view and a societal standard of beauty that are being changed, because people wouldn't just see everyone or judge everyone based on their feature, right? My first argument is why the society in this world would be better. First, there would be no discrimination based on look in this world. This is my justification on why this is likely. Assuming it could be measured, everyone in this world is objectively attractive, meaning that the likelihood of the phenomenon of pretty privilege that exists in status quo world would not happen in this world, because there is no looks to discriminate you against, because everybody look at everybody as physically attractive, right? Second layer to this, in this world, positivism movement doesn't have to exist. This is good because there's no negativity that could incite for body positive movement to exist. So there's no negativity against someone's physique, then the movement such as won't be needed and it won't exist. Body negativity wouldn't have to exist, meaning those incels on Reddit who shames women for weighing more than 50 kilograms won't exist either. Again, there's a veil of ignorance. And yes, social movements such as body positive movement brought women together, but even if it's so selfish, but it's not even selfish, but it's so selfish for opposition if they want to argue that this movement should still exist because it brings women together, because I know that woman does not like to be harassed, and the likelihood for this movement to exist in this world is zero, meaning that there's a higher impact for body positivity to just exist naturally, right? Thirdly, people would judge you based on your personality, not necessarily based their first impression on you on of you on your look, but specifically to base that impression of you based on how you present yourself, on how you talk, how you think, your opinion. People, this is very impactful because in this world, specifically against vulnerable actors such as women, they would be more heard, they would be more considered because when woman is now in a position of power, they won't be just reduced down as what Kamala Harris has been gossip about to sleep her way on top to the office, but also because of their idea, their opinion, and how they think, right? Moving on to my second argument, why the people in this world could prosper better, right? The characterization of the people in this world. First, it is the devastating disorder connected to body image when exists, such as eating disorder, like bulimia, anorexia, body dysmorphia wouldn't exist. Those people who do extreme surgery on their face just to fit societal standard does not exist because in this world you are the society standard. Why is this such a good trait and why the impact is improbable with whatever opposition is going to bring is because majority of women at least once in their life wish they could change something on their body, and they would fall victim towards this disorder. They would not only not eat food and starve themselves. They would fall victim into plastic operation, a fraud plastic operation, and such as, right? Hence why I feel like it is such a good way. It is such a good way to weigh this because in this world there wouldn't be such a thing because women now wouldn't be a very vulnerable actor that are being that are always feeling like they're not enough because of society standard wouldn't have to feel this. Okay, I'm not just gonna talk about women in general. Men, let's talk about men body positivity. Men who, those gym bros who refuse to put anything on their food or any seasoning on their food and just boil their food because they think that putting a bit of seasoning could ruin their progress wouldn't even exist either. People would still want to be healthy. People will still try to be healthy because inherently healthy isn't just because they want to be attractive, because there's an inherent natural need for human being to live longer, right? Have a long life, right? So health in this world still exists, so people wouldn't just neglect to take care of themselves just because people perceive each other as attractive. Those men who try so hard at the gym, even risking injuries or just risking their livelihood in the gym just so they could get a six pack wouldn't exist. Hence why, because all of that reasoning, this world or the society and the people that lived in this world would be a much more preferable alternative in comparison to our status quo. Hence why this motion should stand.
All right. I thank the Prime Minister for that speech. Now I'm calling upon the leader of opposition.
Check, am I audible?
Yes.
Bentar ya, mau split screen dulu. Okay. POI, as stated, unmute. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Within life is a lottery, and life is designed to be very much subjective because people are always taught to be the main character in their own life. As a person, especially as a woman who face a lot of objectification, I don't prefer a world where attractivity is objectively measured. There needs to be a certain specific subjectivity in, mechanizing what is attractive or not. Why is that so? A few setups before I move on to my substantive. First, I think in the world of golf, sure, they told you there is going to be a narrative change. There is going to be, change in the social construct on the idea of attractivity or not. But the fear in government that government can take is that people are going to be equally and objectively attractive, but the fear is never about people still bound to their biological interest on wanting to be A, wanting to be B, and wanting to be C, and so on and so forth. What does that mean? That means that even if there is this objectification or like equal standards or metric of attractivity. We think that something that is worse, which is the idea of biological interest, still rests under their side of the house, and this would most likely lead into like worse social construct under their side of the house. Two arguments then. First, why subjectivity matters, and second, also going to talk about the social construct and how it's going to be worse inside proposition. First, why does then subjectivity becomes very much important? First, I think as a human being with, this very arbitrary life, the only thing that you can have is your unique persona, which is something that you can control. The idea of this unique persona is something that we do not want to be objectified to. Why then? Having this unique persona is
Right.
so much important. It's very much important to be subjective. I think first, when we're talking about self-worth, you have to understand that when talking about self-worth does not necessarily mean you're only going to talk about appearance. Most likely in talking about attractivity, you're going to talk about personality as well, on how most likely you're going to have to pander to like personalities that are deemed or seen as attractive towards people, like a certain personality that are deemed attractive. This is something that we do not want to be objectified on our side proposition, because most likely we lose our control to identify and to value ourselves. But second, when we're talking about persona and their bodily traits, we think that individuals have the nature to want to climb the ladder, to be the best, and want to be known for specific traits that they know other people do not have. People want to have certain types of looks, which can be marketed, for example, like dancers and models. These are individuals who most of the time do not necessarily have the birth lottery of having huge merits to be able to compete with other people. Identifying the existence of this persona, which is like the, um, attractivity that is apparently your birth lottery, that is apparently something that you have in comparison to other people. We think that it's very unfair for people to have this similar or uniform attractiveness when merits and other people that are most likely also going to be competed are not similar or not uniform. Some people just want to sell their persona because they think that this is something that is very much important and the only thing that they can hold on to. We think it's going to be worse under their side of the house. But I think the other point in talking about persona is that you have to understand focusing on equal attractiveness most likely objectifies the idea of physical well-being, or to a certain extent your personality, that you most likely are going to sell to people. This idea of objectification means that you're most likely not going to be weighed further in your inner in like your inner personality or other traits and merits that you most likely have. Why is that so? Because when the idea that you focus on the objectification of this attractiveness, people often and most of the time prioritizes what they see in comparison to like deep dive and see through to the other people. What does that mean? Meaning that most likely you're going to be valued the person's worth instead of a holistic view of your personality as a human and the other value that you have as a human being. Most likely you're going to be immediately judged only through the objectification of looks, which is something that we don't want, because that's basically human nature to prioritize what they see. That is why you have the notions dari mata turun ke hati. What is the weighing then? I think first, in terms of unique persona, it's very much important for people to be able to have that certain sense of selling point that they want to sell to the people, and to be true to themselves, to actually understand their value and also like their meaning inside of their life, and what kind of person they want people to know them as. But moving to the second argument then, why then the social construct is going to be worse under their side of the house? Before that, I'll take Vine.
Can personality and attractiveness coexist?
Look, even if I say that it can coexist, I've told you earlier that most of the time when you have this objectification, most likely it changes the social construct, just like what OG conceded. If the social construct changes, most likely people are going to force or like endorse influence. So take a look at the level of attractivity first, because that's how social construct works. It's how it influences people to actually opt into that social construct to begin with. Moving to my second argument then, why social construct is going to be worse under the data set of the house. Look, understand, people biologically have different interests. Even if you have changed the social construct, you still have this innate urge of a certain preference and aesthetics that you want in a certain individuals, in a certain, bodily features. Within that, the social construct is not possible to say like all is beautiful just because all human being will compete to have like this top preference. We think what is the harm then with the social construct under government side of the house? Most likely the competition is going to be even way worse, because most likely when you have this unification or uniform of attractiveness, you out to like stand up to be able to sell yourself and promote yourself even further, especially for people who basically relies on their attractiveness as like their source of working and income and so on and so forth. Because you most likely, that's like natural human nature to basically wanting to be the one and wanting to like dominate. But I think this is also creates a pressure towards other people in terms of beauty standards, which is going to be very much harmful because it's going to furthermore increase the standards by all those reasons negate.
All right, I thank the leader of opposition for that speech. Now I'm calling upon Deputy Prime Minister.
Oh, so sorry. I don't know if it's just me, but Dennis is inaudible on my end.
Hello,
Can you speak louder then?
hello, hello. Am I audible?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
now yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. I think OO's case is reliant on meritocracy, but I will also prove to you why meritocracy actually exists better under our side of the house. I think under OO's case, it is so focused on objective attractiveness in traits and personality. I think my first speaker already tell you that personality can change. I think that personality can be developed, it can be altered. You can also change your persona. I don't think this will be the focus of this debate. I think we're instead going to focus on much important things such as looks, right? Okay, I'm also going to engage to what they say. They say that basically people still have biological wants to look better. It's within their biology, for example, right? Let's say that this is true. It is less likely people to do life-altering surgery because like you have other outputs such as, for example, fashion. For example, like you can chat up your hair and etc. to change this as a part of your persona. Hence, I think that preference still exists without you having to face the harsh expectation that you should not have curly hair, for example, because the majority of people have straight hair, for example, right? Second, I think directly tackling their main point, talking about not everyone have persona and hence they want to use merits instead. I think this will just be a deadlock because this is situation based. They try to say that merit is also birth lottery. We think yes, birth lottery exists to a certain point. Like you can be born into a rich family and poor family, but I think that under our side of the house, merit in general, you have easier access, for example, to work hard and be judged for the amount of work that you do and for the quality of work that you do or how you contribute to society. Comparatively, relying on your look actually releases the pressure because now you know that you can depend on your look to get a job and win the job interview and win over your boss, and you can keep selling these looks. Like even if someone else is not that attractive and they put twice as much hard work, I think that it's still harder for these people who are not that attractive to begin with, and they're going still to be marginalized and lose anyway. How would this look like under our side? First, I think that everyone would probably look appealing in the similar like they're going to be seen not in a harsher standard. So like in terms of society standard, they're going to be very objectively equal. Second, exactly because there is measurement, I think that in a world where everyone is equally attractive, this means that there's going to be lesser comparison, lesser judgment. Third, this also includes body positivity, in which like people is not also going to change, is not going to face judgment and judgmental. Fourth, I think that this also tackles ethnicity and race, because note that under status quo, some race are seen as more superior and more attractive, such as blue eyes, white pale skin, and etc. And this is important because in all cases, you cannot really choose what trait you are born with. But in terms of hard work, in terms of work ethic, in terms of persona, how you build your compassion, this can always change throughout your life. But the moment when you want to change your looks, it's going to be highly hard to do, hard to be accessible. Yeah. But last, let's say that even if status quo is progressive under their side of the house, we think that these types of people who are able to accept each other is only existent in first world countries, and not like, for example, in third world countries where people are extremely discriminative. Like, for example, if you're being a Chindo in for example, Indonesia, that is a majority of Javanese people, I think that you're still going to face backlash in the end of the day, right? I'm going to give you two extensions. First, talking about how this eliminate inequality that exists because of birth lottery. I think in status quo, people who are born with looks have better chances to be able to get jobs, pass interview. This is because they have looks that are much more appealing to their bosses, for example, right? This marginalizes people in so many ways, in which it lowers people's self-esteem. I think in this motion, if we talk about privileged people, they're able to access things such as plastic surgery, right? Where in comparative, I think that it's harder for people to be able to change their looks in a way. So yeah, I think even if you have accessibility to better beauty, it's only accessible to the top 1%. But let's look at how do we actually impact minorities. I think minorities are oftentimes marginalized, not only from the beauty standard on, for example, how chiseled their jaw is, but actually from the color of their skin. For example, the size of their nose and etc. There's so many beauty standard that is not that is so hard to conform to. And I think in status quo, beauty standards are oftentimes seen as white women portrayed in Hollywood. This is like the epitome of beauty, for example. I think that in OO and CO, I think they will champion. I think they're going to champion why status quo is enough. We think that because, like, just because there's a bit of progress that exists in status quo, I don't think that it is enough for centuries and centuries of discrimination. We also throw a burden to opposition. How then society is still going to function the same? Exactly, when you have all of those minorities such as African American community or Asian community that is always facing discrimination for example, minor difference in physical attributes, but they have to face harsh racism, right? Now, how would minorities have better life under our side of the house? First, I think that their values are seen by their contribution. It would also allow them to have better accessibility because attractiveness goes beyond the color of your skin, but now exactly because of meritocracy, you're going to be judged based on, for example, how you're able to contribute, how you're able to, for example, build your skills and soft skills and etc. So it goes beyond looks, physical looks and etc., but actually pushes people to also develop their soft skill persona and etc. Second, we do support meritocracy, but beyond that, I think minorities under government, even if they work twice as hard, they need to go through scrutiny first. They have to endure years and years of sacrifice, of pain, of, for example, swallowing everything that they want to throw out at their boss, but exactly because they need the job that bad, they're not going to talk up about it. For example, being discriminated at their job, getting lower wage, and etc. The comparative underside OG is that you get the same benefit without having to go through that suffering, right? Just imagine if you have a society that's not going to be racist, that's not going to be judgmental. For example, the small minor things about your physical being, right? Now, okay, under opposition, minorities also do not have to conform to a majority society standard because we think for far too long, having a darker, more tan skin causes people to be insecure. And like being able to accept one's self is reliant on how you're able to love yourself. This is hard for three reasons. First, you need to be very privileged to be able to live in a society that is not judgmental towards you. If you're a rich Chindo and you live in a Chindo community, no one's going to judge you, right? But imagine being the odd one out. You're going to be facing the harsh scrutiny. Second, people will hate themselves and attempt to change. This is why people do double eyelid surgery, for example, because they constantly have to follow what society deem as beautiful, like, yeah, basically what majority wants. Third, I think this is also the same reason why people bleach their skin, for example, right? With these reasons, I think that it constantly becomes hard for people to love themselves under opposition side. Under government, people will still accept themselves because now, first, no one hates you for the color of your skin. You don't overthink about it. You don't, second, the moment when the standard is equal, there's no one better to compare yourself to. Hence, it means that you're not going to change your body that much. And yeah, hence the motion should stand. Thank you.
All right, I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for that speech. Now, Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Yep, am I audible?
Yes, yep. Go.
Okay. Give me a sec. QR preferred method, I've mentioned it through the chat, but please do use raise hand feature or the chat. Yeah. We want to stick in the status quo where appeals do not simply rely on looks and that there are differences in beauty and preferences within society. I think what OG majorly ignores in the context of the debate is that how does social construct really look like when it comes to beauty? Because here's the thing, for the longest time, the reason as to why things such as creativity or, brilliance are things that are also valued in society is because these are the different traits that are different in valuation between every individual. What this means is that not everyone is pretty. So someone that's not pretty has to have something, a certain merit that they need to champion in order for them to seek value in society. This is the reason as to why not everyone is pretty, and this is the reason as to why different values right now that you can see are actually valued. So the coexistence of merit, like what Vinay tried to POI as well, can only happen when there are differences in looks, when there are differences in merits that people have, because it's only when people are able to value each and every of these merits that they're able to value two merits at once. And we say that this is why the difference is very important to happen. All of my responses towards government setup the house will be integrated to my speech. First and foremost, what I want to talk about here is the appreciation for power and merit, which is going to be the main are given to tackle a lot of the concerns coming from government side of the house. Because the premise is this, panels. In this world, we value brilliance and creativity because the way that these merits are socially constructed are positive just because different people possess different merits. What is the problem when everyone has to be pretty? We've already witnessed a society like this in the past where people in the 60s, 70s are only expected to be thin and blonde. But these are the explanations threefold. First and foremost, when everyone has to be pretty, vulnerable groups like women and gender minorities will most likely be objectified and diminished in their values. Because even if the notion is that, because even if the notion of beauty will always exist inside of the house, there are always going to be differences in physical capacity. No, physical capacity and physical power is the core for structural discrimination. This is the stem of patriarchy. The reason as to why dominance over women is something that is, seen, and this is the reason or the core towards like patriarchy right now, is because women will always be seen as the weaker, group of individuals than men. This is the idea that they take back in the hundreds and like back then, because they only see women as like figures of beauty and should not do anything else. So even if discrimination on the basis of beauty will be diminished, you will stay being objectified because you are seen as an individual that should only sit still and look pretty because you are weaker in your physical capacity and you should not do more than just become pretty. But the second issue, I've already told you that my PR preference is to chat or to raise hand. Second, the valuation and beauty will coerce women and gender minorities to stay within their certain tasks and only rely beauty for preference. Like women, for the longest time, have been taught to only stay on nurturing jobs, that they're physically weaker and that they should just pose and be pretty. They should only become, for example, nurses. They should only become teachers and not try to aim more. So even if you want to explore other things, you are coerced to believe that you should stay with your winning trait, which is like only to become pretty. This has happened with Marilyn Monroe and Paris Hilton because they are only portrayed by society as individuals who are dumb blondes despite having like brilliant traits. But thirdly, then, what happens most likely is that there's going to be one-dimensional competitive ground that everyone relies on their beauty, and people with different levels of merits will have different bargaining power. What does this look like? If everyone in this world is pretty, and we assume that other merits are also valued, there will be valuation granted towards people with more merits and more beauty in comparison to the other. Like if everyone is beautiful, you can literally recruit just individuals with more like brilliance or like more creativity, and like Other people who are beautiful that probably do not have the same merits will be set aside. This is where the disparity happens. This is where there's equality towards access between individuals, and this is the root towards like difference in classes. Like even if you're all beautiful, someone is smarter than you, or like someone is like more creative than you, and you will stay in the bottom if you do not have any. This is the beauty in the current world that we see, and this is exactly why it's going to be discriminative in government's world, because most likely this world under gov does not concede that everyone will have the same creativity whatsoever. Why is this going to be better under our side of the house? Through analysis. First and foremost is that we celebrate the different values of marginalized communities through the appreciation of different merits. Like it's okay if some people are not that beautiful, but they're at least smart and creative, and that's not even at least, because like those are traits that are very useful. But it's okay if some people are also beautiful but do not have the same amount of brilliance and creativity. This is only likely under opposition side of the house that you're able to create valuation to these different traits when you only see diversity within individuals, because this is only when people that come from certain groups want to fight for their rights and want themselves to be seen by the general public. This is how feminism came to place to begin with, because they know that there are different values that women hold that inherently needs to be valued and needs to be upheld as well, not only one mere beauty standards. But second of all, it's also the fact that you do not have coercing expectations that's going to hold you back. Like if just being pretty is going to be the only thing that's valued, that's going to stop you. But the moment that, for example, you exceed and you're able to, create worth within every merit that you hold, this is the only way that you're able to create your you're able to establish your ground in the world anyway. But thirdly, then, it's also the fact that there's going to be different routes for different merits to thrive and be successful. Like probably some field needs for you to become creative, some fields needs for you to become smart, and that is okay. Like even if you're only beautiful, that's okay, because you can become models whatsoever. The importance is this: the valuation of unique individual traits, because people are born different, is very important, because uniqueness lies in everyone. Before I proceed, closing.
I agree with your contextualization that status quo is progressing, but the prerequisite to all of your arguments is that merit becomes the default decision-making process. Is it though?
Wait, I do not understand, because like valuation has always been under the concept of merit. Like that has always been like the reason as to why you are seen as someone that's valuable is because you're seen as someone that's going to be contributive to society. Like if the social construct of like certain communities like women or like gender minorities is that they can only become beautiful, and that because they are all beautiful, they should just stay becoming beautiful, that's the only function that they have flight on. Like in the past, civilization relies on like human merit to begin with, so that's going to be the standards. So second, then we say that inclusion of different preferences are also very important, because even if people tell you that Taylor Swift is the best singer in the world, you're going to have preferences for different singers as well. This is also the exact same thing as beauty, because even if people try to brainwash you, your brain functions uniquely and you have different preferences towards beauty. So it's completely fine if there are certain kinds of beauty or different kinds of beauty that exist in this world where you don't have to alter your appearances, where you don't have to go to certain extents, or where you don't have to you don't have to appear as a Minecraft character and like everyone has to be the same. It's okay for this world to have equal forms of beauty that's differing towards one another, but what's important is that everyone's needs, everyone's preferences is catered to. This is how you create a non-discriminative world and an inclusive one. Proud to win.
All right, I thank the deputy leader of opposition for that speech. Now to the closing call, please. Max 7:15. Yeah, I already give 4 speakers more than that. So yeah, let's go to the closing call, starting from government member.
Hi, am I audible and visible?
Yes.
Cool. Picking up POI from ideally opening for cross-bench engagement, but yeah, gladly taking closing as well. Opening this in POI. First are my speech. Very obvious trigger warning. We're obviously going to be talking about beauty standards, individual insecurities, potentially even my own experiences with them. So just want to get that out of the way, strictly for the purposes of this debate. I have no intention to offend any parties. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The biggest question I have in opening half is, what is the likelihood of the actual world? This is a question that opening government fails to answer, and I think crucially so, because we can claim a lot of these impacts, but if there's no explicit link to why the world we have guarantees these impacts and will constantly deeply developed like so, you cannot credit opening government in this debate. I'm here to contextualize to you four things. One, humans are naturally competitive. They wish to discriminate and they wish to be superior regardless. OG's response to this, in response to OO, is to say that the world erases meritocracy. Closing government is going to take a more individual route. We prove to you how, absent the way that the world revolves around you, individuals in status quo will suffer less from differing beauty standards and how they will feel safer within themselves as a result. But secondly, how will people climb the ladder on our side? I think because looks are not the only unifying factor that undermines meritocracy, we give to you a more charitable engagement. People will always value different things differently. What I mean by this is that if you do not have the parameter of hiring a sexy woman as your secretary, your parameter therefore becomes which is going to be which person has better connections, i.e., like orang dalam is going to exist still, right? So I think the question becomes, this is not something that the world can change automatically in our side. So if this is the burden that opening government takes to try to prove why the world is going to be more meritocratic, I think the weighing is that closing government takes a more realistic burden. We can tell you what changes and what doesn't change. So this is also not a knife to opening government, but this is simply to say that I think we can be more charitable to upbench in this debate than what opening government have done. Thirdly, let's talk about beauty standards. I think a more engaging response to OO would be to contextualize beauty standards as fluid and ever-changing. What I mean by that is Indonesia can have light/fair skin as a beauty standard, which discriminates against people naturally with darker skin color. However, countries, for example, in Africa, where the generic large percentage of the populace is of dark skin, would probably have a different beauty standards, i.e., plump lips, voluptuous bodies as a beauty standard, etc. What does this tell you? This tells you that beauty standards are not something that you can simply generalize as one set thing, insofar as a lot of people are going to suffer from beauty standard. However, a lot of people also acknowledge that differing beauty standard that exists. I'm going to tell you why this is important later on in the contributions. But fourth and finally, I think an individual response to this is necessary insofar as how individuals respond to beauty standards and all of those external impacts will always be to change part of yourselves. Prime Minister specifically context is pretty extreme. Because it doesn't always have to look like eating disorders or plastic surgery. That is probably 1% of the populace, but it can simply be looking at your beautiful friends and using the same makeup products that they use. Because you know that, okay, my friend looks beautiful when wearing this makeup, so I should wear this makeup to look beautiful as well. But the whole idea of makeup in and of itself also exists because of that beauty standard, right? Because you value eccentric features like red lips and clear skin. So what does all of these contextualizations mean to you? You cannot generalize the world. You cannot generalize status quo. This is what opening have has always done so far. Therefore, closing government's contributions are not going to make the same mistake as this. We're going to tell you why the world is therefore going to change in a much better way for individuals. Before I go on to my contributions, I'll take Risky if you have anything.
No, the motion is supposed to concede that everyone is going to have different standards of objective beauty. How do you define that? Because like most likely regions will not have like different kinds of what you say. It's going to be equal for everyone.
Right. So what I'm going to answer that is in my contribution. So let's talk about like what that difference actually looks like and how does discrimination change on our side. I think note, conforming to beauty standards is something that is inherently privileged, i.e., in the sense that if you have the money to do plastic surgery, etc., then okay, it's easy for you to do so because you do have the capital to do that. However, what is a more fair metric of change of response to discrimination is to say that changing your attitude to be less arrogant or obnoxious because people who are humble yet outspoken is preferred over you is something that is much more fair and something that is objectively easier for you to change. So when discrimination, which we concede will always exist, manifests onto personality as opposed to looks, I think this is something that is much better. And this is also engaging to Risky's both POI and extension in their speech, right? Let's talk about gender at the same time, because I agree 100% with Risky that discrimination against WGMs are real and hurtful to them. But I want to establish two very important things. One, the fact that on your side, the women who are given preferential treatment are the women who are objectively more attractive because there is an objective measure to do that, and because there is an objective measure to say that you are or are not attractive, means that this is also something that harms WGMs on our side, because there is a significant amount of the it harms the WGMs on your side, because there's still going to be a significant amount of the populace that does not fit into that beauty standards, and therefore do not have access to that preferential treatment. This is where things like your lack of capital also matters, because if you therefore don't have the capital to fit in, i.e., you are a trans woman without the money to undergo liposuction and breast augmentation surgery, you are going to be discriminated against, because your body is going to because people will like imply the beauty standards of men to you, even though you are a trans woman, right? But secondly, this is why we protect WGMs better by creating a safer space within the movement. Because when the parameter is no longer looks, and when it becomes solely based on the fact that you are a WGM, then it is much easier for you to provide support for one another, because you're no longer competing with people within your own group, but you are instead competing between the fact that you are a WGM versus cis males, literally, right? So when this is something that happens on your side, this is something that is much easily, something that you can tackle much better on our side, because of the fact that you do have internal support systems and you can be outspoken about the discrimination that exists. That is why in your world in opposition, people can still say that gender pay gap doesn't exist. On our side, there is empirical evidence to say that people are hired because they are cis male, and people simply don't choose to hire WGMs, right? So when this is something that happens, this is something that you can push back on much easier. Therefore, the weighing is simple. We flip the majority of opening opposition's impacts to say that meritocracy is going to be better on their side. But secondly, we also mechanize the meritocracy idea on opening government. Last impact and last contribution into individual sense of safety. I think the premise of this idea is simple, and this is independently debate winning, because competing is hard on you. Even though this is something that is human nature, the fact that you are either physically incapable or socially, because of a lack of capital, incapable of competing against the people that are more privileged than you, this is where, principally speaking, we give to you a more just world. Practically speaking, we prove to you how it is easier for you to not only compare, because the basis of it is your own individual ability, but even if you're not able to compete because of that, you have access to support systems, because everyone acknowledges that this is the world and the narrative around you. When this happens, when support systems become much easier, the brunt of the harm is less bad on your side. Therefore, very, very proud to propose.
All right, I thank the government member for that speech. Now to the opposition member.
Wait, bisa coret dulu nggak?
Okay, sure, 2 minutes, yeah.
Oke, bentar. Trigger warning. I'm probably gonna talk about very sensitive stuff, not my true opinion. I'll try to take one at opening, but yeah, please don't be I'll probably take one at 5. Okay. I'm gonna start in 3, 2, 1. What is important with attractiveness? Attractiveness allows us to distinct one with another. It actually allows us to help identify what gender is, what what certain people have certain kind of experience, looks, attractiveness, or even some like race. I think the counterfactual that government needs to bring is most likely these people, everyone is going to be the same. It's going to be horrible in their side. Why? I'm going to explain to you then this. The first thing I want to talk about is the argument from beauty standards that I want to engage on. I think I agree with Vinay when he said that beauty standard is fluid. Therefore, I think because this is this house per motion, it's fair for us to defend the status quo in 2024, where there is already BLM, there is already like narrative that talk about all bodies are very beautiful, and there is a lot of progressivity. When people are called ugly, those people who's calling people ugly are going to get a lot of scrutiny from society. Government, I think OG said this is not enough, but we say this is enough because in our side, at least you mitigate being called ugly by telling them extremely and very much so that, hey, you are beautiful no matter the way you are. I think this is already something that is mitigatable, right? Therefore, I don't think this is urgent. Second, on the beauty standards, I think in government, most likely how it looks is people rely on what personality is the best, which is far worse. I'm going to explain you now. The problem with in government is when you rely on I think in government, the beauty standard, I think will still exist in both sides because businesses always have an incentive to, make you feel inferior. Therefore, they buy your product or simply what Vinay say, like humans are competitive, right? The problem is in their side, most likely the beauty standard is going to be in the output of who has what certain personality is going to be the most like appealing, the most ideal. This looks like maybe you have to be competitive, you have to be ambitious, you have to have a lot of achievement. The beauty standard most likely means this is going to be the beauty standard in their side, which is far harder to access in comparison to beauty standards, especially with the in our side, our beauty standard, where you have to have like good looks, especially in our status quo. There is already a lot of progressivity with dealing this kind of issue. Therefore, beauty standard will still exist in both sides. It's much easier to fulfill in all because of progressivity in comparison to government. Second, why then be, having like being able to be distinct one another is very important. Because I think the problem with both sides is the discrimination in the past will happen anyway. Just like what CG told you, like humans are going to be competitive, they're going to discriminate one another. But only in our side we are able to fulfill or at least give more reparation to the people we are oppressing, because now we are able to distinct them better in comparison in government, where they rely on like internal personality, internal like achievement, or etc etc. In opposition, exactly because you can recognize one another very distinctly, it means reparation in the form of making quotas for a certain person who have the similar feature, or this looks like giving affirmative action to this kind of people will be much easier, meaning reparation for the wrongdoing in the past. Exactly because both sides will happen anyway, reparation will be much better in our side in comparison to their side, because it's hard for you to identify what distinct one another, which group of society has already been, discriminated and what's not. It's hard for you to give reparation. And I think in government, it just becomes a leeway for, the government to run away from their moral obligation and just hide under a blanket, which means it's far worse in their side. Second, I think social movement would be much better in our side, because I think when you collectivize, in our side, you collectivize through race, through like, people with similar circumstances, people who are oppressed together, and therefore they are now able to collectivize and demand for better fight. In government, what most likely will happen is they collectivize based on how rich you are and how achieving you are, because exactly in that it becomes objective. It's much harder for you to get changes, get resources, when people who are, for example, are oppressed in the middle or lower class, for example. It's hard for you to get resources. In opposition, you have a diverse amount of people, with different kind of experiences. You have diverse amount of people with different kind of resources, and therefore you are able to make better changes in opposition. This means better reparation, but second, it also means better ability to collectivize, which means better fight, better public debates, etc., etc. We win in this case. But lastly, what I want to distinct is that most likely in their side there's gonna be a very concentrated of power, right? Because I think most likely in their side, especially throughout history, when looking at people and seeing that them being attractive is going to be majority, like majority of them is going to look at something that is a very objective metric. The problem with this going to make it way more elitist. Why status quo is at least more ideal than government is because at least in status quo you allow for wealth to be distributed. You see a lot of middle class marrying another higher class, or low class going to middle class because they marry one another,
CG.
or they simply become, this simply is way more happening in our side, exactly because the metric is attractiveness and not objective, yeah, objective. But before six, I'll take opening first before, if you have any.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Beauty is something you're born with, you die with. Hard work, at least you can change. How under your side, even if you fail, how is it better under your side, knowing that you cannot change your looks?
First, we already told you that there are a lot of looks like concept like all bodies are beautiful already exist in our side. I don't see why that's important. Second, changing your personality. I did tell you that beauty personality will focus on one personality. Most likely it's going to be like an ambitious personality because people look up to it. This already have a status quo too. This is way harder to achieve because you have to spend more time in this. It's going to take way more longer than what a status quo already give you. But lastly, on the wealth gap, exactly because now you also rely on attractiveness to, have the incentive to marry people who are in harsh work, lower class than you, it means more wealth distribution. When more wealth distribution happens, it means less concentration of power. The world become less elitist, meaning there's also diverse people with diverse amount of resources, which also help you to take and collectivize and get more resource and demand for change. I agree in both sides. There is gonna be a lot of oppression and discrimination, but the way this debate should win is on who is able to fight and counter those discrimination better. Our side shows you that, and therefore we should also co-opt the idea of being able to freely express yourself, because I think being able to demand for equality is the prerequisite for that. So proud to oppose.
All right, I thank the member of opposition for that speech. Now the government whip.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Before I start my speech, I'm just gonna like close. I'm so sorry because I will close my camera because my Wi-Fi is lagging, and second, I will talk something that is probably really harmful. So this is only for debate purposes. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Hanel's famous lyrics from a rapper say that I don't really need your makeup, your body really making me nervous, and I really like the way you are. And this is why we see that objective attractive are actually one of the great parameters to see people that is equally objectively attractive. And I will engage with every benches starting from like why CG over OO. First on the climbing the ladder argument. Um, Two responses: how this benefit of climb up the ladder is pursued is remain questioning, because yes, we do agree about the climb ladder situation, but best believe that there are parameters that could make people climb the ladder other than changing someone else's look. Second, being a dancer or being a model are become something generalized, seeing in the status quo that people achieving this kind of career in creative industry. Therefore, there are a lot of ways to climb the ladder, not only this kind of focuses especially to changing your looks just because you need to get into a certain position. Second, about the extension from discriminating against gender, response on this: WGM can create support system for one another, and this is likely because to some extent girls support girls. There's also different context in status quo. We can say this apply and we will improve much better because the support is something that protects you against a valid grievance. In y'all case, if you guys are frail, no one helps you guys, and us, we will help you. Third, about the there's beauty standard. Um, three uh Three responses. See, the narratives of the motions are about objectively measures. To clarify that objectively means people can have the way to complement and perspective on look diversely. Second, this is why we flip it. In comparison, y'all say that needs to do surgery and changing nose, this beauty standard finally become artificial, and it becomes a harm since the way of changing like surgery is exclusive, and it becomes a burden, especially on people. Some people cannot just avoid it, but they
Yo,
try.
IOO.
Yeah.
The subjectivity of traits adds more value to the diversity. We've quoted that patriarchy derived from devaluing women's physical capacity. Now, if if looks is now uniform, then what kind of bargaining power that each traits has?
Even though like it's always even though like at the end you guys might thinking it's always about look, at the end I think like let's just engage in case like people like rich people marry like pretty people, like let's just say in the case like ani kabupaten, they trying to looking rich and pretty, but therefore people even the DPR still make them as simpanan. It's not really even that important. They're still make as simpanan. They're not the actual wife. This shows that why you need to changing your own identity, that's actually going to harm you at the end. Moving on to my extension on what about the beauty standard. Beauty standard may still exist, but remind that in our side that our standard remains to support everyone differentiability and celebrate it without telling them to change it, especially on how to pursue climb ladder. Consider value of life is not always pursuing ladder. Moving on to a society construct that everyone should be pretty. third response on this. So are the idea of welfareness of individuals are always about societal construct, not as act of meritocracy that everyone should pursue that in very first place. Second, again, moving on onto like my case, like Ani stereotype, it's not even that beneficial in very first place, because imagine if people trying to pursue this kind of lifestyle, we're not trying to see people based on their what intelligence. People don't want to learn anymore. They're just trying to I just want to be pretty so that I can have a welfareness. This is harmful on your side of the house. Another response. Moving on. In our case, we support everyone and we celebrate without actually telling them or told them to change their own self. And last, celebrate of different matters. But why is it about looks? See, there are also a lot of many alternatives to consider attractive, on how the word of sacrificing yourself to be someone else is harmful and something that should be celebrated. You can enhance your character, and what even like progressive people would say like, oh, you have risk. That still count as progressiveness. And moving on our our engaged to CO about objective will be more pressures on example on attractiveness on marrying rich versus rich. We don't see this as an urgency on why people need to achieve this as a proof to have a better life. Linking back on the burden, why you put why we this is actually a really big burden, especially on people that they don't have money. They came from a poor family, thinking like, oh, I need to loan some money so that I could change myself. This is something that harmful. It's not, and we're not really like thinking something like that is supposed to be celebrated. And another response to that, even just seeing on this, looking at this strategy, we need to see that even right now, rich people have their own standards. It's not always about look. You need to at least came from a rich family. You need to like at least you have like more standards more than just look. And lastly, no, moving on to my engagement to OG and objective attractiveness look on ethnic features. We're actually trying to see how the mechanizations and how to view the attractiveness, because why is it turned into characters? Because you mentioned about ethnic features, and in our side, Phineas mentioned that changing on our character means that it's never about how people born with that features, but about how each individuals can actually try to enhance themselves. They try to control their character to not putting standards on other people, and it will remain of people appreciate each other flaws and seeing that as attractive. And moving on to the last engage about how body images exist. The society standard about surgery is not exist on your house. I think the likelihood of the society standard will benefit. This is why we better on the likelihood, because we show that there are choices to appreciate look on their own without causing any harm. And on the other side, we still give support and consent that people still can do surgery, that every decision that people made are still okay as long they're not creating harm to other. And so do people that not throwing hate, and even people who cannot afford it, people that don't have specific features that benefits them. We still celebrate inclusivity, and that is why therefore CG wins over all benches, because the way of celebrating everyone are through diverse way of objective measure. They're appreciate, celebrated without changing everything, and also don't have to put on the burden and their action in any kind of focuses. Proud to um
All right, I thank the government whip for that speech. Now to the opposition whip.
Am I audible? Okay. UI preference through chat. Setting my personal timer first, and also this only for debate, not representing any of my personal. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1.
Judge, remember that discrimination still happen on both sides, be it in form of based on looks on our side or based on intelligent characteristic or wealth on government side. All of it are going to be like hard for you to like change. Like for example, you are born with a certain types of looks, or you are born with certain type of characteristic, meaning that the argument that talk about like this is going to like erase discrimination about certain standards that is not important, because when you like erase one type of standard discrimination, you are going to like emphasize more on other standards. Like for example, uh, discrimination regarding like wealth is going to be like more intense, because you now have less some things to like compare with other people, meaning that the meaning that things like discrimination is going to like be more worse on their side. But let's uh what is CEO's contribution on this debate, right? Why CEO is going to be above OO? OO talks about being able to freely express yourself and why this helps them. You need to understand the prerequisite of us having such ideal situation where everyone is valued and progressive. This situation can only happen when you collectivize, fight for oppression for a long time, then and only then you are able to find a progressive society that we have right now. We told you how being able to distinguish one another helps people gain power and resource that is crucial for change. We are the prerequisite of for an OO's case to actually work, right? Because we explained to you how then this will create a progressivity on our side, right? But let's respond to all the government bench first. OG said that there's no going to be no discrimination based on looks, but there is still massive discrimination based on wealth and personality on their side, or even religion. And most likely, these are going to be more emphasized, even more, since there are less amount of standard existing. Meaning the standards and pressure happen would be even worse. Even the smallest amount of wealth difference would affect how people view you now, because people are obsessed in trying to be better than other people, right? When before, appearance might have been enough to save you from like being standardized by public, because you are because even if like you are not rich, but at least you are pretty. But now it's increasingly difficult to escape the wealth gap or high standards of achievement, as these are objective measures that are concretely quantified, unlike beauty standard, which can be subjective and allow for like people to embrace the idea that everyone is beautiful regardless of how different the appearance is, right? Wealth cannot be treated the same way. It is impossible to start to like tell people that, oh, everyone is wealthy regardless of their household income, right? It's impossible. That means it's not going to be like giving people like the ability to like be grateful with what they have on their side. And before, when people who were like, for example, poor or less intelligent could still find reasons to be grateful for themselves through their looks, now because everyone is equally attractive, this doesn't work anymore. Like how OG told you, like being attractive isn't seen as something to be grateful now on their side, as there's no comparison to anyone who is less attractive or on their side, right? The idea of self-love then would not happen as instant as what they said, because when it's already equal since the very beginning, you will not see that as something you will have to be, that it is something that you will have to be grateful for. Rather, you are going to down on the idea that you are less fortunate because you are born from like a not rich family and stuff, and less skilled even more because you are because it's going to be like the major standards going to happen like inside, like. But second of all, when they talk about like body altering attempt will be worse on opposition side, because beauty standard and stuff, we think that this still happen on their side, because the fact that people are a human being that is always try to be better than other people, but then on their side it is going to be done in other standard that are going to be superior. For example, on their side, if the standard is going to be like from the intelligent, more like a smarter people is going to be more attractive for a certain type of people, then you will have like more brain surgery, for example, on their side. You will have more people injecting drugs to be able to be more productive and stuff on their side, right? Meaning that this is still are going to be massive on their side when these are still the standards like the happening on their side, right? Meaning that like body altering or like those attempt to like changes your features or stuff is going to still happen on both sides, regardless of regardless if everyone is objectively attractive or not, people will still try to be like more superior than other, because when you are superior than other, people will feel like they are more comfortable, meaning that this will still happen regardless of you are attractive or not, etc. Right? Meaning that, yeah, those kind of things to compete with other people will still happen, resulting in like those attempts, etc. Yeah. And lastly, CG, they said that it is easier to compete because you do not
CG
have to
for
compete
6.
in physics and stuff. Their case is only true if in opposition we have to defend conservatism. Conservatism. But in opposition side, we can defend status quo, i.e. 2024, where there is mitigation, fulfilling beauty standard has been easier and will only become easier in the future. Changing personality, however, is way harder, because the
CG
thing
last
that
chance.
built your personality is your formative experience. For you to change personality truly is for you to experience new scenarios, which general people cannot afford this, right? But next, we think that people's preference still exists to like have a certain types of body, like for example to have like a bigger nose and stuff, even if all people find that they are attractive, but to feel that to have that fulfillment when you have a certain type of body still happen on their side. But now when you are trying to change it, you'll be seen as ungrateful and stuff, right? Because you now people are we people agree that we all have what we deserve and stuff, and people are, yeah, the same, meaning that those kind of things will not be, yeah, supported and stuff. Like people will not have that fulfillment to have that certain preference that they want. It's going to be worse than that side. And lastly, they said that they do not understand the urgency for high class to marry middle class or low class. We say that it's good to have wealth distribution, because when you have wealth, you have power. It's good if the power is distributed, so there is less discrimination to happen. Having a world where it is elitist mean only rich people have so much power, which mean no check and balance on discrimination. The moment you allow to marry another with different kind of class, you distribute more wealth, less power given to the rich and given to the middle class. This happen way more frequently in op rather than being objective on gov.
All right. Thank you everyone for the